it kind of tastes like orange juice with it tastes like a vodka orange juice. Omnipollo and Brujos collaboration beer, the middle triple IPA. This is a big beer coming in at 10%. It is a collaboration beer between a Swedish brewery and the American brewery. I know a lot about Omnipollo. I've been to Sweden, I've been to Stockholm, I've checked out their tap room, one of my favorite breweries in the whole world. I don't know anything about Brujos other than it's based in America and the name means sorcerers in Spanish, I think. So let's see if they can conjure up a decent beer and make that 10% alcohol disappear. So, what's interesting about a triple IPA? Is it just a case of bumping up the alcohol content and dry hopping a whole lot more and just making a generally bigger IPA? Or is there something a little bit more technical than that? Surprise, surprise, it is a little bit more technical. So, most people, when they think about big beers like a 10% beer, you're either thinking about a Baltic porter or you're thinking about something maybe brewed in Belgium. And there's a lot of kind of technical stuff going on in there because you have so much more alcohol to deal with that there is a potential for there to be kind of harsh flavors coming in, something, bitter alcohols, kind of fusel alcohols, and something that just really dominates the beer. And when you have something like an IPA, and I imagine looking at the grain bill, this is wheat and oats. This is going to be a hazy beer, like a New England style. You want something that's quite soft, pillowy, subtly sweet on the malt side, and then big on the hop side. And you don't want it to be completely dominated by a harsh alcohol that comes with a 10%. So there is a bit of a delicate operation going on to produce a beer that drinks well despite being so big. Um, I imagine that they're playing around with things like glycerol content, what's produced by the yeast. They're playing around with how many oats and wheats there are, the adjuncts, probably bumping up a bit. They might also be playing around with the mash temperature, so that the final gravity finishes a little bit higher. So there's a bit more sweetness there, a little bit more residual sweetness going on. They're not going to be using any kind of caramel malts, which is another way that you can kind of bump up sweetness and kind of hide that harsher alcohol content. That's how they used to do it back in the kind of West Coast days when they made bigger, higher ABV beers, and they would have kind of that balancing out of more kind of Cara Munichs and stuff going on. But in a modern hazy, that's a big no-no. So you are looking at kind of wheat and oat content. You are looking at playing around with the final gravity. Your high glycerol yeast, that's something like verdant yeast or your London ale yeasts. This is all playing around with the mouthfeel, the body of the beer, the sweetness to counteract with that alcohol content. And then also your kind of management of fermentation and reducing those fusel alcohol off flavors that are potential there. So great temperature control and timings and all that kind of thing going on. So there's a lot that goes on into a triple IPA other than just bumping everything up and saying super maximum. Um, it is quite technical. So it is very impressive when a brewery can produce a good triple IPA. Like it's even more impressive than than a double IPA or whatever. It is a big step up, I think, in terms of kind of brewing expertise to achieve still a drinkable and soft, pillowy, nice New England style, hazy style IPA, but at a higher alcohol content and with a beautiful hop expression. So this one, reading, it's not on the can, but reading on the website, it's got Citra, uh, big classic famous hop going around for years, American. And then you have Nelson Sauvin and Riwaka. Those are New Zealand hops. So Nelson is going to bring that kind of white winey Sauvignon Blanc. And then Riwaka is kind of pink grapefruit, tropical, citric kind of stuff going on. That's interesting in terms of how that's going to play into the 10% ABV, and then also what they've done with the malt bill, the sweetness and everything. So it's a bit of balancing to do there. But an interesting hop bill. Citra is your standard just go-to hop. It's just a fantastic hop. Name says exactly what it's all about. Big citrus flavors and aromas, and then yeah, your more modern New Zealand hops are bringing that kind of slightly sharper tropical flavors, which are big on the scene these days. So this is a very interesting beer to review to see how they've actually achieved it and see whether it is actually a decent beer or not. It's Omnipollo for sure, a fantastic brewery. I'm sure that Brujos are also a great brewery in America. So I'm expecting that they've nailed this. Let's crack it open and find out. It is 100% haze. You cannot see through this beer even remotely. It is a kind of light straw color, slightly murky looking, like a little bit of a kind of hot greenish tint, like very, very slight. Um, White head that is going down fairly quickly. This looks like it's an absolute massive dry hop, triple dry hop, triple ABV going on. This is a big, big beer. Let's give it a smell. Yeah, okay, so you definitely have the citrus coming off that, and a bit of brightness from a kind of grapefruit kind of aroma as well. So orange citrus and a kind of grapefruit sharpness to round it out. And then a very, very slight white winey aroma, I guess, from the Nelson. Doesn't smell as big as you would think it smells. It is best before 13th of May this year, so it is still quite fresh. Um, Still doesn't smell like a very high ABV beer. It is being dominated by that hop expression. Yeah, I'd say that this doesn't smell as kind of as put together as your typical kind of Omnipollo hazy beer. They smell like a little bit sweet, subtle, and then a really nice hop aroma. This smells like it kind of reminds me of like when you're home brewing, like early on in your home brewing, you're just like just throw as many hops in it as possible, man. Let's just make some insane IPA. That's what that smells like. So it is very much hop saturated to the maximum. That's what that's smelling like. Yeah, it is kind of like a big sweet orangey citrus, pink grapefruit, slight white winey going on. Let's see what it tastes like. Yeah, wow. Okay, it kind of tastes like orange juice with it's like a it tastes like a vodka orange juice. I think that's just my brain trying to figure out the sensation of how thick that is, and just it is like a juice. Um, there is an alcohol warmth there. It's not too harsh, but it's definitely present. So you do know this is 10%, but it's not like undrinkable in any sense. It is just like that. There's no hiding that. There's a really nice sweetness to this beer, which balances quite well with that presence of the alcohol. And the alcohol does round out into a bit of hop bitterness, so it kind of blends together it works, and that's probably why the alcohol doesn't taste kind of harsh or kind of jarring. It's present, but it blends into the beer quite well. Yeah, it drinks really nicely. It is as dangerous as drinking like an orange juice and vodka, in the sense that like it's not, it doesn't limit you to slow sipping. Like you could drink this quite quickly, and it would it would do some damage. So in terms of achieving a beer that is still very drinkable, they've achieved that for sure. You've got big orangey citrus flavor going on. And then that kind of grapefruit aroma translates into the beer, but without the zing or the kind of uh, almost astringency of grapefruit. So it is more of a subtleness on the grapefruit side. The orangey kind of citrusesque flavor profile is very much present, and it's quite sweet, and it's very juicy. I'm not picking up much in terms of the Nelson. Let me see. Yeah, I guess there is like a hint on the edges of maybe perhaps like passion fruit lychee. Once you get past that big orangey flavor, there is those other things kind of lurking around. Perhaps a bit of lychee passion fruit, which is moving more into the kind of New Zealand hop side. So I think the Riwaka and the Citra are really working well together, and that's producing a big kind of citric, sweet, but still bright enough citric flavor. And then the Nelson is blending in the background, perhaps tying it together a bit, restraining it a bit, and those three hops are working together quite nicely. I'm not sure what the final gravity on this is, but there is a kind of higher sweetness to this beer. It isn't like your soft, pillowy, like verdant kind of New England IPA coming in at like 6% or whatever. There is like a decent body and a decent sweetness to it, but it isn't cloying, which is the achievement of a triple IPA. This is what I was talking about in terms of like you need the body to match the alcohol content, but you don't want to go too far. You don't want it to be cloying. You don't want it to be overly sweet. You still want it to be drinkable, and I think they've achieved this in this beer. In terms of a triple IPA, I don't. I've this may be like my second, third, or maybe fourth triple IPA I've had in my brewing and tasting career. But yeah, no, not something I would drink all the time, but something very occasionally, and something to appreciate in terms of how difficult it is to produce a good one. So this is very much in the category of a good one. Um, Worth trying for sure. It's a bit big for me. It kind of blows all my taste buds and everything out of the water. This would be a difficult beer to follow in a tap room, in terms of what comes next. And I don't think I could drink more than one of these. I mean, it is 10%, so in that sense, it is too big a beer for me. But I can appreciate it for sure. And if you're into this kind of thing, these two breweries are clearly very good, and they've made a kind of, it's not novelty, but it is a kind of special uh, beer in terms of you're not going to drink this all the time. It is something to indulge in, and understand, and also see kind of the boundaries of pushing IPAs, the boundaries of pushing these modern hops, and also your big alcohol content. So yeah, not as refined as some of those 10, 11, 12% Belgian beers, which are like, some of them like Delirium, you can't even tell that it's such a high alcohol content. It's extremely dangerous, but also just incredible how they achieve that. This is, yeah, this is not that, but they've done a great job of balancing it out in terms of it is a big alcohol content that translates into a flavor, but they've balanced it quite well on the malt side, and they're still getting a lot out of those hops. So it is a big, juicy, citrusy, slightly heated, decent amount of bitterness going on. Kind of hazy, maximum haze beer. It is a New England IPA on steroids. 2/3 of the way down the glass, I need to slow down because it is bloody strong. And yeah, this is the juiciest, one of the juiciest beers I've ever tasted in terms of like mouthfeel. And yeah, your brain when you're drinking it is like, is this out of a carton? Uh, it's a big beer. Fair play to them. I mean, they're getting kind of crazy in what they can do in terms of the juiciness of a beer. 10%, and it must be pushing like 40% adjuncts, like wheat and oats. Look at it. It looks like orange milk. Because you can see the oats in there. Like it's a big beer. Very interesting, man. Very interesting and very dangerous. I don't know how some people are just really into these big juicy beers, and they're usually around 7-8%. This one's at 10%. I just don't know how they drink them on the regular. For me, it's just too much. Like, give me a 5% pale ale. I love it. I could drink 3 or 4. I enjoy it. I still get you know, the juicy flavor, the hop flavor, blah blah blah. For me, this is the beer equivalent of like a dark chocolate cake, like a really indulgent, rich chocolate cake that you have very rarely, and you can only have a few spoonfuls, and it tastes very nice, but it is just too much. That's what this is. Like, you can appreciate how good that you know triple dark chocolate gatto is, but you don't want 3 bowls of it because you'll be sick. For me, this is that. Like it's good. 1 glass for me is enough. Even 2/3 of it, and I'm feeling a bit merry, and it's not the same as having a few pints of a pale ale or whatever. This is a significant step up. Maybe I just need to man up a little bit. I don't know. There's more in the can. There's more beer in the can. I've not even. I do love it. I do love it, but also it's too much for me. Uh, Hazy boys are nuts, mate. I mean, West Coast IPAs. Some of them were, big. For me, big is like 7%, not 10%. Triple IPA is a bit silly. A bit silly, lads. This is, remember when West Coast IPAs started getting really silly with IBUs, and they were like, this beer is 100 IBUs, and you had like Arrogant Bastard Ale or whatever, and it just got insane in terms of how bitter they were trying to make the beers. And then there was like debates about like, is there like a maximum amount of bitterness that a beer can get to, and after that, is it just marketing? Like, really, your beer is 120 IBU? I don't believe you. This is the hazy equivalent of that. It's like, let's make this the milkiest, juiciest, haziest, and also strongest beer we can without it tasting like sick in a glass. Like, that's what this is. It's too much, mate. It is too much. And it's supposed to be in the middle. This ain't in the middle, mate. This is in the extreme. Um, bullseye though. Artwork works though. That's how I feel in my brain right now. Tripping out.